Hey, everybody. Our first interview is with an author of a relatively new kids book about the game of Go, which I don't know that I've ever heard of before. I was looking on the American Go Association website, learned that this person went down to the DC Go Center, and my interest was piqued. And so I reached out. She was more than happy to connect, and we had some really great conversation about the book, about how she got into Go, and about some of the lessons and themes she tied in with Go, and really being a teenager and being a kid and your relationship with your parents, with the outside world, all these sorts of things. So without further ado, let's jump into my conversation with Jessie Janowitz. I wanted to start by actually just giving a little bit of your background because you had a really nice description on your website. You really fell in love with French language and French pastries when you went to Princeton for college. And then you actually majored in comparative literature because it allowed you to study French plus everything else that you were interested in, including creative writing. And you said that after college, you taught in a French public high school for cooking and restaurant service, and that you actually sold translation rights for a publishing house, and that this led you to law school, which you really loved. And one of the many cool things you found in the US legal system is that everything is about storytelling and stories. And then eventually, thanks to your family, you found your way back to reading and writing, and particularly ones for kids, because those are the ones that you've always loved the best. And I love that you gave a couple funny little quirks about yourself. You said, things I hate: mayonnaise, bats, the flying kind, and bad moods. And then things you love: being told a great story by a great storyteller and then laughing so hard you cry, and then donuts. So it was just so nice to connect a little bit personally there. Can you just start? I mean, we're going to spend our time really talking about this book that you wrote, All the Ways to Go, which came out last year. And so exciting because there's, I think, almost no books on Go in sort of the fiction realm. So maybe we can just start with sort of the obvious question, which is like, tell me about how you first learned about Go through your kids, and then how the game came to be like the focal point of the book.
Sure. So my kids were fortunate enough to go to a super wacky school in Brooklyn that believed in, for good and for bad, for hiring teachers who were just excited to teach something. And they thought, like, if you brought in people who were really excited to teach something, everything would work out. And definitely there are gaps in my kids' learning, like that produces, the issue with progressive learning, which is, a lot about some things and like nothing about others. However, I will say that all three of my kids, who are very different learners, love to learn. And to me, that is the most important thing. And that will take you through life. If you're excited to learn, you're good in my book. And our experience with Go was a perfect example of this coming to life. So they had hired someone named Paul Lockhart to teach math there. And I don't know, probably a lot of people in the Go world know who Paul is. A lot of people who are interested in mathematics know who Paul is. He wrote a much beloved book called The Mathematician's Lament, which is about the creativity and beauty in math and how math is so often taught the wrong way. And he himself is a really interesting character. He did not go to college. He went off on his own and did math independently. I mean, I think after high school, he was basically an autodidact, and sent in his work to, like, I forget if it was Columbia or Stanford. And they were like, sure, we'll accept you to our PhD program. And among the many things that Paul loves were games. Somehow he found his way to St. Anne's, which is where my kids went to school. And he said to the school, like, I will come and teach, but I have to be able to teach anything I want to anyone I want. And they said, okay. And he set up this Go seminar. And it was after school. He didn't get paid to do it. And any kids could go. And it started with my eldest, who was, a real mathy, gamey kid. And he became obsessed with Go. and his friends became obsessed with Go. And they got all the Go problem books, and he insisted upon going to a Go camp. There aren't a lot of Go camps. So he and 3 friends spent a week in the summer in Parsippany, New Jersey, in a basement conference room of some very derelict Days Inn. They were the only white kids there, and they were by far the worst. Toby was so happy because by the end of the week, he could, like, basically hang with the 6-year-old. But what blew me away, so it was like, wow, these kids are really interested in this. And at first, I wasn't really paying attention. But then my younger kids wanted to go. And because they were much younger, I had to go and like sit in the corner and watch and listen. And Paul wasn't cool with that. So I had to start playing. What I loved was there's a storytelling aspect to Go, to the way that Paul taught it, which was this narrating what you're doing. And it was the complete opposite of a competitive, super conflict-oriented game. It was like discovery and adventure and culture. And I just like fell in love with it. And going and watching these kids play just became this incredible window on that world to me. And I said, one day, I'd already started writing for children. And I was like, one day I'm going to write a book that's going to have a Go club in it. I have no idea how I'm going to do this because writing about a game seems really, really difficult, especially when you're not an expert in it. But eventually I figured out how I wanted to do it, and all the threads of my story kind of came together. So that's a very long-winded way to explain how I came to Go.
Oh, that's phenomenal. I appreciate you sharing it because, first of all, I was raised in Princeton, New Jersey. So it was so fun to hear all the places that you were going to and actually being able to visualize where they actually were. And I think you told us, before we hopped on that, your whole family is sort of very embedded in Princeton University and those sorts of things. And again, congratulations on your son or your child getting into Princeton. But that was really fun. And I love how at the end, and I do want to be very careful. I don't want to give any spoilers or anything like that. So definitely stop me because everybody definitely should read the book. Is you kind of put this nice part, this author's note at the end where you just say, hey, it's my wish that this book inspires you to try to pick up this game. And this concept around feeling like it really brings out these concepts of like connectedness and connection. I think that really spoke to me. Let's start maybe with the cast of characters. So we got Milo, who is really the main character. This is a boy. He's living in the Upper West Side of Manhattan. He's 12 years old, and he is the son of a single mom, and he is some sort of chess prodigy. And so where we start the book, it's really like you're learning that certain things happen with him around his feelings for chess. And so that eventually leads to him actually finding his way, spending the summer in Princeton, New Jersey, which for those of us who are not from the Northeastern United States is maybe an hour and 15 minutes by train from Manhattan. Then we meet the other big character, Roxy. Can you just give us like a high level, like what are they all about? I mean, what are the things that we should be aware of as we get into the book?
Sure. So, with all my books, I'm really interested in middle grade students and their families. And the families part is like a really important part to me, that through reading books, we are able to sometimes talk to our kids about things that maybe we're not so comfortable talking about otherwise. I am a big fan of putting in really loving parents who make mistakes, like all parents, and giving kids an opportunity to see parents go, yep, I messed up. You know, I had the best intentions and I messed this one up. I think that's so liberating for both parents and kids to be reading together. And as a parent, I have seen with my own kids as a kid myself, this really complicated dynamic that develops in families where everyone just wants to do right by their kids, where kids, especially today, express some kind of nascent interest in, it doesn't matter what it is, gymnastics, drawing, and parents think, great, and they want to be so supportive. And then kids change so much, so fast, and they don't understand why. And their parents all of a sudden are all in on their gymnastics trophies, bowling trophies, soccer games, whatever it is. It's really hard for kids to tell the truth. And I had never seen a book that had dealt with that. And I was like, wow, if I can show a family struggle with that and I can show a kid dealing with that, I think that could be really beneficial. And so that's where Milo is. He can't tell his mom that he doesn't want to play chess anymore. And he's also in this moment where I think the hardest thing about being a kid that age is like you wake up one day and suddenly things are, you feel different. You don't know why. You can't explain. Your clothes don't fit and it's uncomfortable to talk about. And you don't even really have the language to talk about it because you don't get it. So that's really where Milo is. But Milo is a pleaser, which, lots of good kids are. I do a lot of
Right.
school visits. And when I ask kids, have you ever told a white lie to avoid hurting someone you love? They all raise their hand. I mean, this is something that we really ingrain in our kids, and it's very confusing. On the one hand, we always tell our kids, well, you always have to tell the truth, and we really value honesty. But at the same time, your kids observe you not telling the truth all the time. That sweater, that was really delicious, like whatever it is, communication is really complicated in that way. And so Milo is someone whose wheels are always turning, like, how is what I'm going to say impacting the person that I'm speaking to? And then he meets Roxy, who is exactly the opposite, who has no filter, who can't understand why anyone would ever not want to tell the truth. And so these really awkward situations develop. I thought it was really important to have a character like Roxy because the other thing that I've seen as a parent and in schools is there's certain social skills that somehow a majority of people pick up without being told. But there are lots of kids who are very smart and who just don't pick up on them.
Right.
And they don't get it. And no one knows why. And no one talks about it. And so I wanted to create a space where it was okay to say, wait, I don't get, why can't I stand that close to you? Like, why am I making you uncomfortable? Why do I have to say thank you when you're not really complimenting me? Why do I have to? And so Roxy recognizes this and puts everything into rules and tries to organize her life that way. And so in terms of character development, Roxy learns a little bit from Milo about how to maybe be a little bit more empathetic. And Milo learns from Roxy that you can't really be yourself if you're not being honest, if you're not being true to yourself.
There is literally a couple pieces of terminology that you use in the book that really helps flag for the reader these things. So, for example, for Roxy, like you said, it is the rules, right? She's like, I don't understand the rules. What are the rules? And then you see Milo trying to help her along the way. But then for Milo, there's this concept that I really liked how you built it up over the book, which is, man, he's having such a hard time dealing with his feelings about, losing interest in chess. And why is that? And then really not wanting to disappoint his mom. That kind of comes to a really interesting climax at the end of the book and resolution where we kind of see things happen. But for Milo, there's this theme throughout the book of what's called the fizz. And then you have the zone. Can you just give us a little sense for what that might mean?
Sure. I wanted to have a word that described that feeling we all get when we're doing something we really love and everything else disappears. And we don't really know why. And so it doesn't have to be chess or Go, but if that feeling goes away, it's devastating. If you love something and it provided everything for you, you were in the zone and then you can't get back there and you can't even describe why. When I write and it's going well, I'm in the zone. I can't tell you why I can't get there sometimes, and it's super frustrating. But I thought that was something that people could really relate to. I like giving kids the opportunity to recognize a feeling or a phenomenon as it's described in the book, and I'll often give it, like, its own name, but I don't like labeling things in the way that they're labeled in the real world because I
Mm.
think kids, they have all these, like, preconceived conceptions of, like, what that label denotes, and it was actually really interesting. I had a great school visit in New Hampshire with a 4th grade class that apparently was super into games. The teacher had read the entire book to them. One of the kids' parents had bought them a Go board. They were
Nice.
already playing. I came in and sat down with them, and they wanted me to play Go with them, which I did, which was so cool, and they showed one of the
Uh,
kids showed me he was holding the Go stone correctly, and it was the best.
That's great.
Um, and the thing that was particularly good was it wasn't just, like, the kids who were into games were playing, it was the whole class had clearly, like, gotten into this. And as we were playing, they were asking me questions about the book, and one of the questions they asked me was, "Is Roxy autistic?"
That makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah,
And I
please. Yeah, what did you
said
say?
I said, "Well, what do you think?" And and they said, "Well, yeah, she kind of does seem autistic." And they were like, "So why wouldn't you just say that?" And I said, "Because does it matter? Do you need that word to understand what Roxy is or doing?" And they were like, "No, we guess not." And then the other thing, one of the kids said, the title, All the Ways to Go. Does that mean all the ways you can go or, like, all the ways to the game go? And then one of the other kids was like, "It's a metaphor. It means both."
It must have been so fun to, like, watch that all unravel right in front of you, right? Like,
It's
that's
the
probably,
best.
like, what you're looking for, right, out of the authorship of this. Just to draw that connection, I was listening to an interview with Paul Simon, right? For anybody that's in the English-speaking world, Paul Simon is just, like, one of the greatest well-known artists out there, musicians. But one thing the interviewer asked Paul Simon is they said, "Paul, when you perform these songs, what are you thinking of? And like, how are you performing it? How are you making sure you perform it a certain way?" And he kind of said, "Well, listen, there's a song that it might be the most famous song, and I've sung it a million times. And what I end up finding is that I can't sing it and have it mean the same thing every time because I'm in a completely different place in life every single time I'm singing it, and I need to go somewhere different." And in the same way, when people ask me about my songs and they're like, "Yeah, what does this mean? What does that mean?" It's kind of like me asking you this question. You're like, "Hey, Travis, that's a great question." You have something that you might have in mind when you're constructing it as the author, but probably there's a huge joy in you saying, "You know what? I don't want to put that label on it. I want your imagination and your mind as the reader to take over and go different places." Does that resonate?
Absolutely. I think labels like that are very othering. On the one hand, I think it's great that neurodivergence and learning differences have been more are better understood and they're not as taboo. I did a school visit recently. I was doing writing workshops with the kids and
Hmm.
they were doing character creation. And I said, "Can you think of a character in a book
Mhm.
that you really connected to?" And one boy raised his hand and he said, "Yes, Percy Jackson." And I said, "How come?" And he said, "Because he has dyslexia and ADHD just like me."
Wow.
And there was no stigma and it was great. And so I love that we live in a world that that is now possible.
Mhm.
However, as a kid who has learning differences, there are so many different traits that form that diagnosis and that person. And you can't understand a person just by knowing that diagnosis. And so being present and really communicating and interacting with someone requires us to put those labels aside and just really try to listen. And I tried to show, I don't know if you remember at the beginning of the book when they go to the camp, there's a
Mhm.
very well-meaning camp counselor who is in, education school and is trying to do his best, but he is approaching Roxy with kind of like a one-size-fits-all, you need to feel what they're feeling. Well, that's not how Roxy's built. So, yeah, I really try to get kids to be present in that way. Labeling is like putting someone at arm's length always in my understanding of it. And if
Mm.
I make up a word, I'm very into making up words. I make up a word and I build it from the ground up so that I have this language that the kids then, the readers then, and I understand. I think it gives them an opportunity to have a more complex and more in-depth understanding of something.
Another big theme in the book is this concept of riskiness and connectedness. You weave through the different characters and sort of storylines these concepts that link back to Go really well, because I think a lot of us as Go enthusiasts, we're playing the game and we're seeing these very simple relationships form that then form into more complex dynamics. And we're like, oh my gosh, this is so much like things in real life. And for example, right, even something as simple as, okay, I'm going to play on this part of the board. And by the way, I really want to give you kudos for the way that you try to describe what's happening in a game. It's really hard to do, right? I mean, just with words without visuals is tough. And I also want to give you credit for the header of each chapter is a move in a game of Go. And I loved that. I thought that was so much fun to have with me along the way. Anyways, in those moments on the board, you're constantly trying to decide, is a group strong or is it weak, right? And should I go after a group or not? And you're constantly trying to figure out, like, okay, do I need to stay connected and safe? Or do I need to kind of go out and take a risk and see what happens? And so there are these moments in the storyline where we see this with Milo's character and with figuring out if he should tell his mom about the situation with chess, or Roxy with, should I go to school or should I really make the case for being homeschooled? Can you tell us a little bit more about, how you were trying to weave that together? I mean, was it just something that sort of happened as you were building out every underlying storyline, or was that something that was very intentional?
Some things you get to the end of the book and you're like, "Oh, wow, cool." Like,
You're like, I didn't
that was
realize this would
much
happen.
yeah,
Okay.
that was much more like an, "Oh, wow, cool."
Okay, got
And
it.
I saw it more as I got to the end, and it built itself naturally as Roxy and Milo understand the game more and the
Mhm.
reader understands the game more, then it was easier to kind of make those connections. The idea of connectedness was something that was always there from the beginning. Like, in terms of what was most intentional was the idea of having Milo be in touch with his grandmother so closely
Mm,
through text, and my initial ideas about connectedness in the book related to being present. That was something that was intentional from the beginning. Part of the reason that I think kids playing games or reading books or playing musical instruments, you can't be in the zone. You can't be connected to anything if you're multitasking, right? If I'm watching Grey's Anatomy for the 15th time while I'm playing spelling bee on my phone, or it's my daughter who's, like, obsessed with the game Set. I know my daughter's gonna be, like, the first professional Set player. Do you know the game Set?
I don't.
Oh, the game Set is an amazing pattern recognition game.
Oh, cool.
You gotta go out and get the cards, you gotta teach your kid how to play. It's a beautiful,
Okay.
beautiful game. My daughter's obsessed with it. There's an app for it. But my point is that when she's doing that, she's not really fully engaged. She's not really fully connected or present with anything. And so it doesn't give the same catharsis, imagination. Like, she's not really in the zone of everything. Unlike when she plays the piano, for example, and she'll say, it's like therapy because when I'm playing the piano, I can't do anything else. I have to be reading the notes. I have to be playing the keys. I've got to be. And what I love about the physical game of Go, and the same thing I would argue goes to reading a book, is that you can't multitask. And it is engaging your eyes, if you're holding a book, your hands, your imagination. So, this idea of being present and connected was very much a part of discovering the game of Go and games in general. It was also connected to the idea of discovering books in the library. The feelings of the
Love that.
stones in Go, the feelings
Yes.
of the books. I think what we don't realize, whether it's physically playing a game of Go or it's walking through a library, when we're doing something that is engaging as many senses as possible, we're more present. And therefore, I believe we open ourselves up to a more complex connection. So that was something that was intentional at the beginning. The connection between in Go, we're trying to find this balance between connectedness and risk only really came out when I was going through reading about the myths of the creation of Go. And I was like, oh, and then it kind of fell into the book.
And I love it because you did a really nice job researching for the book about Go. So I saw in some of the books that they found, Milo and Roxy, in the library, some of the books, I was like, oh, yeah, I know that book, right? I know that. Now, there were some I would literally, right after read it, I was like, I'm looking this thing up. There was one that was like, Go and the Meaning of Life. Is
I
that a
made
real
that
book?
up. No.
Ah, I wanted it so bad. So I was like, okay, I think it's made up. That was actually really well done because I think the people that do know Go, they're like, yes, I know that book. Tell me about how you thought about explaining how to play this game because you put it in different spots in the book, you know, whether it's about capturing or what a tiger's mouth is or these sorts of things. And a lot of the conversation that I find in the Go community, and maybe you do too, is like when you have a beginner and how you get them into the game, this book could be a really nice way to get kids into the game. What was that thought process like? Was it saying, okay, I'm just going to see where the storyline goes and find opportunities to bring in the basic elements of how the game is played, or was it something else?
So, a couple of things. First thing I want to say, because I don't want to forget, there aren't that many people who get the headings of the chapters. And so I feel like for the people who mention it, I was at an American Go Association event in DC, and there was a South Korean man who was so excited about the headings. And he was like, and they were really good players. Like, where did that game come from? He was
That
so
looked like a Japanese game, very aesthetically pleasing, like really pretty. Do you have a source for that game?
So I was gonna it's like an Easter egg in the book. There is still a Go Club at St. Anne's, and I had the idea that the chapter headings could be a game that advances stone by stone as each chapter
Genius.
progresses. Paul left the school after his son got sick. There's a new head of the Go Club who was kind of trained by Paul. His name is Nick, and I emailed Nick, and I was like, "I'm writing this book. I think he thinks I'm crazy." And he was like, "How could you write a book? You're not a great Go player. Like, how?" And I was like, "But I have this idea about the chapter headings. Can I just go to a Go Club and I'll capture move by move? I'll video it, and then I'll send it to the production person at the publishing house." And he goes, "Oh, no. It should be like our best players." So he recorded the best two St. Anne's players playing the first 54 moves or whatever of a game that they played. And I love that the connection to St. Anne's and everything. And I love that it's something that at least people who play Go get a lot of pleasure out of. So it was great.
Did you get any comments from when you went down to DC and things? Did anybody say anything about the quality of the game?
Yes, this guy was like, "This is a really, really great game." Like
See, but
they
that's
know how to play.
huge because in most media that shows Go, it's complete gobbledygook. Like it doesn't even, I'm serious, it doesn't even resemble it. So like very well done on that.
Yeah, so that was fun. In terms of figuring out how to introduce Go, that really relied on my experience. One of the great things about being at a huge research university is that there are all of these amazing people around, like really different people, and they're so into whatever they're doing that if you just listen, they'll tell you. And there's like these libraries that have tons of books that no one ever looks for anymore. And especially in today's age where like we all spend way too much time just looking at a computer screen, I thought, well, this is a great opportunity. That would be an easy way to discover Go because things can happen on a university campus that like wouldn't happen in real life. Everyone understands that they're there for a particular reason. Like there's more natural interaction, there's more trust. It was actually really funny. With the first draft, just for your listeners who haven't read the book, Milo discovers this game from graduate students who are playing, and he and Roxy kind of nag them into showing them the game. They're neuroscience PhD students. And that I ended up putting in the book because I had discovered all this incredible stuff. There's all this research about how playing Go like changes your brain structures. And I was like, oh, well, that's so cool. And so I thought, well, that was great. I'll have them talk to these graduate students. And I have no idea where my editor or the assistant editor went to college, but maybe they went to college in a city. But they were kind of like, wouldn't that be weird? Like they're talking to like grown-ups on the campus and like they're supposed to be in camp. And I was thinking, like, not really, not not at Princeton. Like, I don't think that anyone would be anxious about that. I think in the book I ended up adding that the head of the camp lives on the same graduate hall as a graduate student, so he knows that they're okay. So it took 10 years for me to figure out how to, like, make a kid discover the game in a way that was gonna make sense, especially because just writing about a game, I didn't want people to get bored and, like, so, yeah, it was a complicated process. I had been a longtime fan of The Queen's Gambit, the novel, and it's so funny because when the movie came out or the series, everyone was like, "Oh, The Queen's Gambit." I was like, "Do you know how old that book is?"
Oh,
Like,
seriously? I had no
I read
idea.
that book in, like, high school, and it just shows you, like, it takes so long to get any project really going, whether you're a filmmaker or a writer, but I really loved I wasn't a chess player, and I remember in high school being like it was, like, just enough of chess in there for me to be interested in, but not too much, so that in my head was kind of a model. The American Go Association, the president has been so, so supportive and wonderful, and he said he really sees this book as an opportunity to get kids interested in Go, besides the fact that he was like, "It's not wrong, and it's not too complicated, and it's not, like" he was very excited, and I said, "It helps that I'm really a beginner too." I think if I were a really advanced player, it would have been really hard for me. My other 2 books for middle schoolers are about a boy who's really into baking and starts his own donut business, and people are always like, "Well, are you a huge baker?" And it's like, "Well, actually, I learned to bake with my kids. My mom didn't bake I didn't bake a chocolate chip cookie till I was an adult." And I think that writing about something that I don't know really well makes it easier for me to retain that childlike discovery. Also thought, when there are diagrams in the book where Triss is kind of, like, puzzling things out, I thought, "Oh, well, kids need a little bit of a visual in order to get that in their head."
At the end of the book, what I love is you give a little, this is how Go is played. These are some of the rules. Here are some resources. Like that was so wonderful that whoever comes upon the book really has that to go off and give them, a chance to do it. And I just want to say that I really understand where you're coming from in the sense of sometimes when we're so advanced in something, we forget what it's like to go through those beginning experiences and make those connections for the first time. And that's particularly difficult when you're a teacher. You're teaching something and you know that thing so well, you forget it.
I
Yeah.
wanted to mention in terms of, like, a discovery and a journey for me that's been really great is my family and I went to Japan. I had already written the book, it hadn't come out, and I wanted to do some work at the Tokyo Go Association. I got an appointment and I went, and the president, like, met with me. I had a guide and a translator, and I think he thought it was, like, some version of Candid Camera. When I tried to explain to him what I was doing, he kept giving me these weird looks, and it was only when I mentioned the surrounding game, the film,
Ah,
that he was like, "Oh, okay."
okay.
Um, then he took my family all around, and it was amazing. We saw incredible things. We went into the professional ceremonial Go room. He had my kids
Wow.
sit. It was incredible, and nobody visits. But on the main floor, it was all these tables with mostly men, some women, septuagenarians, octogenarians playing Go. They came there, it was open play, and my kids were there, and this 80-year-old man spoke no English, came over and asked my son to play Go. And
Wow.
without any English, he would say, "No, it was a teaching game." And I have this amazing picture of him, shaking Leo's hand at the end. And I was like, that was it. That was, making this connection. And the other thing that I saw through my kids that was so important to me is that all 3 of my kids are really different learners, and all 3 of my kids enjoyed Go. My middle son is not the mathy one. but he was so game to play Go with this guy. But when I came back and the book was coming out and people were connecting me to the Go community, I was feeling really nervous that maybe someone was going to feel like this was like cultural appropriation in some way. Maybe they thought I didn't know enough, that it was the height of arrogance. And I was so nervous. So I was so grateful when I met people who are from those communities who appreciated it. But it went even farther, which is that, I go to book festivals and families walk around. They're only kids' books, and families walk around. And I have met several families where one or both of the parents are South Korean, Chinese, Japanese, and they have traumatic experiences of their parents trying to teach them how to play Go, because in
Wow.
their home, it was like super competitive and super structured and not about the connection, but about winning. And like, you had to do this. And like, then you were going to go to school to do it. And they were flooded with this nostalgia, but also like, oh, I could introduce my kid to this in a way that isn't going to be really traumatic. Like, thank you. This is great. Like, a woman who had a 2-year-old bought the book because she was so excited for when her daughter got older to be able to like reconnect in this way. So that's just something that's
Incredible.
unusual and another like gift that I never would have guessed.
And how would you have known that, right? Just to hear that those experiences and that expectation was happening in those households. So that's really powerful. Maybe we could start to close the conversation by taking this experience you've had and writing this book. What advice do you give for the community and for sort of the population in general on how to get others into the game? How would you articulate how to help people get others into the game when the opportunity presents itself?
I think one of the best things we can do as a family is learn something together. It doesn't have to be competitive to start out. So, like, if you download an app, you can talk about it together and you learn together. And that way it's not like, oh, I have this information and I'm imparting it to you, but there's this incredible experience that happens when adults and kids are on the same plane. When I went to this event in DC, one of the things that I found like so emotional was the range of ages of people there was just enormous. They were all playing together. And in American society, there are so few opportunities for multi-generational interaction. It's interesting. I just got an email from a mom who's a homeschooler, and she said that she and her kids listened to the audiobook of All the Ways to Go, and they've started playing Go together. So I do think there may be enough Go in the book to start out playing really basic capture Go, which I do think is a really great way to start. But if you live in like a major city center, there are Go clubs everywhere, and they all have like an open session, and they're so excited to have you come. I think that's a great in-person. I'm very into in-person things to do with your family. Like, everyone show up and eat pizza. And pair Go is also great because it kind of removes that focus on one person as the winner or the loser, which I think can really tamp down people's enthusiasm for play.
Jesse, I just want to say, I mean, personally, like this was such a fun and wonderful book. I love the themes, how you masterfully weave to go into the book. It's going to be one of those great ways that we can now introduce it to the community. So definitely everybody should go out and read it, All the Ways to Go. Yeah, I want to really just thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. This was really fun.
We're taking a quick break to say thank you to our individual sponsors for the show. It really helps and I appreciate it. We also want to talk about the sponsors for this episode. The first sponsor is Smart Go One. Smart Go One is your complete app for the game of Go. Learn to play, practice against the computer, do a whole bunch of other things, including reading Go books that have been digitized. What I love about it is that you actually have these diagrams in the books that have been remade so that you can interact with them and actually play different lines. SmartGo 1 is available in the App Store on iPhone, iPad, Mac, and the Go books are also available as an EPUB file for other devices. AI Sensei is also a sponsor of this episode. You can go to their website, use their advanced AI for looking at your games, seeing where your big mistakes are. You can also play against their AI bot that is set to different levels of skill and is made to be more human-like. Go to ai-sensei.com to check that out. Go Magic is also a sponsor of the episode. They have a phenomenal platform online where you can play different problems, work on different areas of your game, whether it's opening, whether it's the end game, all sorts of spots. Check that out at gomagic.org. The last sponsor for this episode is Baduk Pop. They are an app for Go players of any level to practice Go problems, do interactive Go lessons, and play against other players from around the world. So you can find them at badukpop.com. That's BADUKPOP.com, or wherever you go to buy apps. With that, we will continue with the episode. Thanks for your patience. Okay, we are going to go ahead and shift gears and now talk to a person that I learned about on our Baduk. He had accomplished this incredible feat where he was able to achieve 1 Dan within a year, which is pretty incredible. And so I reached out to Isaac Machado, to use the American pronunciation, and he was super willing to chat and talk and told me all about his process, what it was like, some lessons he learned along the way. Let's go ahead and jump right into that. Thanks for coming on, Isaac. So maybe we can just get started and have a conversation.
Yeah.
First, I found out about you, as I think a lot of people did, through Reddit and through your posts. Would you be willing to just kind of give us a little bit of a summary of what you said in the post?
Yeah. So in the post, basically, I explain my whole journey since I began playing, which was about a year and 2 months ago now, and the issues I had throughout the way. I talk about some tournaments I attended and how, in the end, I was able to get to Wandan in a year, which is a goal that I think a lot of people in the Go community think about and want to achieve. So I thought some people would be interested in me sharing how I did it and the whole story.
And so as you provided that information in your post, you also just gave some of the details. You also very openly asked what people thought about your thinking about trying to become a professional player. And there was some really helpful posts, helpful responses from other people, and then certainly some less helpful ones too. But tell me a little bit about what the process was like going through that year and starting to learn and then finding you're interested, and then how did you go from there?
Yeah, so I first learned about Go through just a YouTube video that popped up in my feed. I used to be really interested in chess and I played a lot, but at that time I was getting a bit bored. So when I saw the video, I just thought, maybe this is a game that can substitute chess for me. And it was just explaining the rules. I learned how to play through that. I signed up for OGS and played a couple games, and I was basically instantly addicted to the game. I just kept playing. I found it really interesting, really enjoyable, and through that, I decided to join my local club. Decided to go there a couple times every week, and I ended up signing up for my home city's tournament just a few months later. I think I was 17Q at the time.
Okay.
And, I just kept getting more and more into the game. I ended up making a lot of friends through it. And I just got sucked into this community. At some point, I saw that I was having some really good improvement. And so I decided to say, if you want to become a pro, how good does your improvement have to be? And everyone always, when I checked online, a lot of people just mentioned, oh, 1 Dan in 1 year. That's
Right.
the golden standard. So I thought, let's just try for that. Let's see if maybe I'm good enough to try to go farther. And I just kept improving, and eventually in January I was able to do it.
Wow. Well, first of all, congratulations. That's an
Thank
incredible
you.
achievement. And what was nice about your post was that it didn't seem like you were really there to brag. What came across was also that you were trying to just think through, this was a challenge I gave to myself. I didn't know if I could achieve it. You could still love playing Go, but not achieve those sorts of things.
Yeah.
But you did achieve it. And now you're sort of saying, okay, what's next? If we just for a moment talk about sort of outside of Go, my understanding is that you're about 17 years old and you graduated from sort of high school at what, 16?
Yes. Technically, I think I was 15 at the time, but
Wow. Okay. So you graduated quite young and then you went into your undergraduate studies or your university studies. And you said you started focusing on physics. Is that right?
Mhm.
What happened at that point? I think you said that there was a little bit of burnout, perhaps.
Yeah. So my whole life I've been really interested in physics. It's always the career I've gone towards. And I was actually really enjoying my first year of physics, but I found the whole academic aspect in practice to be a bit tiring after so
Hmm.
many years. The actual action of having to sit down and study and all that. Because to graduate so early, I had to put in a lot of effort. And I felt maybe a bit at the time that I had used all of my time just to focus on this academic aspect of my life, and then maybe I didn't focus so much on other stuff. So for me, the way I saw it is that, I have these 2 extra years of time that I gained by putting this effort. So what if I use this extra time to do something else? Let's leave university for a bit and focus on Go.
I really like how you talked about how you're very comfortable looking at alternatives and other options and choices in life. And I think that's also a microcosm of Go, it seems, because when you're playing Go and something's happening on the board and maybe you wanted to build territory or strength or influence in one part of the board, and maybe the opponent plays something that might change those plans, you have to very quickly pivot and try something else and really go with the flow. How was the response and what was your reaction when you heard some of the different questions and responses on your post? Some people said, that's great. You have extra time. You're clearly very smart, very intelligent. Why not? Right? Like, give it a try.
Mhm.
It sounded like other people had different opinions. So, can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so there were a lot of people. I think the main response was that I shouldn't even think about trying to go pro,
Hmm.
which I was expecting because,
Hmm.
with this whole goal I had reached one, and I had checked other posts on the subreddit about
Yeah.
people asking about this kind of stuff. The first thing they say is try to get to Wanda in a year, and then maybe you can do it. And then the other thing they say is don't even think about it. Like, it's impossible to live off of code. You're just gonna have a bad time.
Right.
And so I was expecting this kind of response. The top comment actually is from 6 or 7 player. He's actually also used to be a student from Alexandria Dinerstein,
Hmm.
and he's saying that exact thing. So for me, this was expected, and of course, this part of the comments I understand them, and in part I agree with them. But also, if I never try, I'll never know if it's actually possible to do any of this. And on the other side, there were a lot of people that, like you said, they saw that maybe there was the potential to keep going forward and maybe actually become a professional or become a strong amateur player, which I really appreciated that there was actually this kind of response. One thing I found a bit fun is that I asked 3 questions on my post. One of them was if maybe I was deciding to go professional a bit prematurely, which most people answered. But the other two, in typical Reddit fashion, which I was expecting, no one even talked about. They just answered the first question and that's it.
The other question I knew was, would
Mhm.
anybody be interested in learning about my journey and getting
Mhm.
updates, right? That was
Yes.
one. What was the other one?
The other one was just asking about different Go academies and
Yes, yes.
yes, Go resources essentially for players aiming to study in Asia.
Understood. Some people, though, said even if you have some time now, this is such a critical time. It's such an important time where you can capitalize on things. Why try to go for becoming professional? And I think what I understand, or what I think you might have been saying, is that you do show a passion for the game. You have to if you're playing that much. The question is, how different is that from becoming a professional, which is obviously on another level? So do you think you would still love the game, enjoy the game, even if you discover that the professional path doesn't work for you?
Well, I think for me, maybe becoming professional isn't the most important part. I think it's a part of the whole process. But my main idea at this point is more trying to live off of Go, which maybe is even more difficult than being a professional. So for me, even if it's maybe not possible for me to become a professional or anything like that, I know even personally some people who even being mid-level DAM players here in Europe are able to well, they scrape by basically,
Sure, sure.
and maybe not make a full living, but they're able to get something out of Go, and that's more what I'm looking for at this point, rather than just being a professional. I think maybe a lot of people focused on that because it's the big headline thing, right? But it's not really my main goal. I just think getting to that level is necessary to actually make a living.
If I may, Isaac, I wanted to
Mhm.
ask you a little bit about a really nice response you had to someone on the post you provided that was just asking about what some of your learning process was, how many hours a day you were playing. Were you playing mostly games? Were you studying professional games? And I think you gave a really nice response. You talked about how you would try to spend around 6 to 8 hours per day. You take the weekends off. You talk about doing Sumego in the beginning of the day and then doing games primarily and reviewing them not only with AI, but reviewing them with your teacher. One thing I think that stuck with me, and I think you got nice responses from, was your point about how important it is to take a break. Can you speak
Mhm.
to that a little bit?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people maybe take the game too seriously, and they can sometimes get really tired because of this, or they can get angry from losing a game, maybe, or sad. And mainly what I refer to is these kinds of situations when you aren't actually enjoying the game, you just have to take a break. Because a lot of people, me included, for example, what happens is that we lose a game and then immediately we queue up to play another one. And we don't even check why we lost. We don't do anything. We just go and play the exact same game, but now we are mad and we play even worse and we lose again and again. I just think it's important to try to consciously think that you're actually getting into this. You're getting mad. You're getting, in the video game world, we usually say tilted, right? And just stop, leave the game for maybe a day or two, and then come back. But also more long-term breaks. So maybe this doesn't happen for most people, but if you're putting a lot of hours into the game, there were some times where I just couldn't concentrate on my games if I spent
Mm,
too much time on it, and it was impossible to actually get a good quality game. So at the point, I knew that I just had to stop, leave the game, and maybe come back in a week or two, and then keep playing again.
I appreciate you sharing that because I don't think I always hear a lot of higher level players talk about the psychology of the game and
Mhm.
how you should be handling your emotions, because emotions are very important. We all want to win every game, but that's not reality. Even if you're playing somebody of equal strength,
Yes.
theoretically, you might only win half the time, and that's somebody of equal strength. Are there any techniques that you use? I mean, beyond just stepping away?
Mainly just that. I leave it and then I ignore it for some time, and then I come back. But at the end of the day, I think it's important to remember that even for someone like me who is trying to take this more seriously, it's just a game. There isn't one single match that's so important that you should stay mad about it for a long time. Maybe at the top professional level, but for us, nothing like that.
Got it. So for you, in a
Mhm.
perfect world, let's just imagine you could do everything you wanted to do. And part of that is this Go career. Do you think it would look like doing teaching, possibly getting the professional status, whether it's in the European Go Federation or otherwise? And then do you think you would still combine that with other interests, like back to the world of academia with physics or something else? I mean, what are your thoughts at this point?
Well, right now, for me, ideally, I think I would really enjoy if I could live off of teaching and tournaments. Tournaments in Europe, it's only really a small percentage.
Mhm.
If I could actually live off of it, because prices are really small. But even teaching, I really enjoy teaching, both in Go and in other fields. I've always really enjoyed it. So for me, ideally, it would be that. And then obviously, once I become a professional, if I had enough time outside of this whole career, I would enjoy to go back to physics
Hmm.
and maybe get a degree in that. I've always tried to look for in my life physics.
Mm.
Something that I've always really enjoyed. So
Tell me a little bit about the unexpected parts of being in the Go community or playing Go that you have enjoyed. Like you mentioned the social side of things. So can you just tell us like what has that experience been like? And was it a pleasant surprise or were you expecting to find, friends and community?
yeah, I think definitely the most surprising thing was the whole community aspect. In chess, I think we're maybe not so close. Also, it's a much bigger community here in Europe, right? So since there are less Go players, I think we need to maintain more tight-knit communities. And so it wasn't really something I was looking for initially, this kind of thing, but it made the whole experience much more enjoyable. Not just from the side of actually socializing, but also because I think it helped me improve faster. Because
Hmm.
I had stronger players that were able to explain my mistakes and which moves were better and this kind of thing. I think it's just really beneficial to have a closer community like we do in Go.
It makes a lot of sense. And I heard you say in your post and other people say that AI is really helpful. But
Mhm.
having a strong player or a teacher or many different people give you their advice as well on a game position or a move also is incredibly important. And it probably helps build a better overall sense for your game.
Yeah, about studying with AI, a lot of people asked me in the post and they
Hmm.
just asked me in general. And although it is true that both are necessary, studying with AI and actually having a teacher, at some point, I think AI becomes more useful. Mainly, it's really important to have a human player if you are a beginner, so DDK player or lower SDK, because the AI never actually explains why a move is good, it's bad, and it's often really difficult to understand, even at a higher level, the sequences AI plays. So a lot of people just put their game into AI and just trust blindly what the
Right.
computer says.
Right. Of course.
Yeah, and maybe the AI shows a Joseki move, for example, that's not actually Joseki, but in that specific situation, it's good. And then people just say, "Oh, it must be a Joseki move." So in that sense, it's really important to have another human player. But at some point, I think like 3Q and above, you can probably review most of your games with AI. And if you have one game where it's a really complex position and the AI just gives some variation that's impossible to understand, then you should go to a human player so he can explain.
Interesting. Isaac, no, this is great. I really appreciate you taking some time to tell me about your situation, your journey so far. Is there anything that you wanted to say before we left or talk about?
Well, I did want to just thank my teacher, Alexander Winerstein, because he was really supportive when I made the post. He himself made an article talking about it and all that, and he has been really supportive throughout this whole journey. So I just wanted to thank him.
Our final conversation for the episode is with TelegraphGo, and I ask him about different styles of playing in Go. How should we think about it? Is one better than the other? Do you need to have a certain style? What should you be striving for? Let's jump right into the conversation.
Yeah, I am mostly thinking about styles as board positions that you can get into. And then I know that some people like particular kinds of board positions. And I've started to realize that you can get a board position which demands that you play a particular kind of way. So, for example, if you have a massive amount of influence and a weak group to target, you are required to attack it.
Okay.
Many people, their style is just the type of position that they have the deepest strategic or tactical understanding of. What that comes down to is not a perfect understanding still, right? So many people have a style which is, speaking for amateurs, many people have a style which is just harming them, in my opinion, that they often lead to the same kind of position, which if the opponent plays in a certain way that disallows them the common ways that they know how to win, then they do not get a chance to gain against that opponent. So you should approach each position as though you were the player who has that position as their real house, and that is your style, is that you play this kind of position. Like if you get an attacking position, that you should do your best to be an attacking player and to have an attacking style. And when you think that the position doesn't demand you be an attacking player, but to be a territorial player, then you should do your best to play a territorial style. In that sense, there's no such thing as a best style. That every position you should play that style the way it's supposed to be played. However, what people are really talking about when they talk about style is often like just the tendency of which type of position they want to go for, right? If you have two equalish seeming options, that you tend to hone in on the one which will allow you to play a certain kind of style. I would say for me, I've grown the most whenever I actively try to play the style which I feel I'm least comfortable with and worst at all the time. So that's my recommendation. Eventually you'll get good or comfortable with one style that you feel you can use it to win your games, and it's a good way to win. But it still doesn't mean that like once you get to the next level up, your opponents will still punish you about your lack of skill at the other styles.
This almost gets back to like this concept of whether I keep trying to improve my strengths or I try to improve my weaknesses. I mean, there are moments on the board where in reviewing it, I'll see that maybe AI says, or my teacher says that there are 4, 5, 6 moves that are all good moves that are almost close to the blue move or the optimal one. Is that a situation where, I mean, you gave the example, there's 2 moves and I should, maybe I go for the one that's less my natural style. When there are 6 or 7 moves, do you just see that again as another example of like, yeah, let me try something that might not be my natural tendency, but I will learn in the process. I will be a more well-rounded player over the long term, even if it makes it harder in this game. I'm learning, I'm trying something new.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I would say that for most players, the positions where you feel the least comfortable are the ones where all the groups are dying and all the cuts are being cut and everything is crazy. No one really knows what to do in that kind of position, right?
But some people thrive on that too, right? They might not know the answer, but they're like...
Right. So some people have that style of chaos that they know how to weave their way through the messiest of streets. most people aren't like that. And
Right.
frankly,
Yeah.
they should be if they want to improve. If you feel that you're less comfortable in a position of total chaos than in a position of relative stability, then becoming more of a chaos merchant is probably a good way to hone your skills. I would say that most of the people who are improving really fast, which tend to be like the kids, have no shame in making terrible mistakes and absolutely go crazy and try to make insane things work. So in terms of best style for improvement, that's it until that becomes more comfortable than the sort of slower game, at which point you should try to get better at the slower game.
And isn't there a point, though, where if you're being chaotic or reckless for reckless sake, but you're not actually trying to absorb any of that, I mean, that's just silliness, or that's just like randomness, right? It's like, okay, maybe sometimes I come out of this successful, other times I don't. But you're saying, hey, if you just say, I don't care if I lose big, if I'm really actually trying here and it is very different and it's out of my comfort zone, you can really get a lot from that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the least used styles is the sort of, people call it zombie style, where you
What's
put
that?
stones inside your opponent's territory, or let your opponent take stones and nominally capture them, but leave them with a huge amount of potential to be saved and use that to your advantage in the future. This is a very complicated style because you have to actually be able to follow up on your threats, which are real, and not aim at threats which are fake. So to understand exactly when it's good to make a threat and when it's not going to be very effective, and when they answer that threat, it would be bad for you anyway, is quite complicated. But by far, this is like the best way to be able to handle a situation where your stones are relatively dead. So it happens all the time in real games, but many people feel so extremely uncomfortable with that. Particularly at the Q rank, they tend to just give it away and not even pretend to try to play that style.
Right.
The zombie style is very, very practically effective and theoretically effective, and it's just very disregarded by a lot of people who don't want anything to do with chaos for no particular reason.
In the lower ranks, like at my rank in like the single digit, double digit queue, I could see it though, where if I'm so far behind in a game and I say, okay, well, that territory appears to be my opponent's anyways. If I'm throwing a stone in there and they're following me, obviously just off of basic scoring rules, I'm not any worse off, but I'm still behind. So I might as well try. But you're saying, hey, this gets much more nuanced when you're at higher levels and you have to think about carefully positioning these sort of so-called zombie stones so that they can sort of be, the Aji can be activated.
Many people consider an attack to be their weapon of how to win the game. If I can try to kill your stones, then I can gain like that. But much of the time that I win my games, it's because I allow my opponent, who likes to attack me in a way which is not so good. And I allow them to kill me in a way which is not so good. And then I prove it. I prove that I gained from that sequence. I did something else which is more valuable as they killed me, and that their method of killing me didn't gain that much value due to the lack of effectiveness. Not only does that open up many possibilities for defensive play and general strategies that you might not otherwise be able to use, it's also a great counter to the vast majority of players' main strategy to win of attacking to seize initiative, to aim at kills, right? If you can easily show them that that style doesn't gain because you won't die in a negative way, you won't let your stones die and lose value off of that, then the attacking players will have a very hard time beating you. So it's not like this is a last resort option. It's something that you can play as a style. Absolutely, the kids are doing that, who are improving very fast. And they don't feel shame when they just fuck it up horribly, and it's bad fun. But it's like, oh man, what went wrong executionally? It's not like the strategy. They feel like, oh, I should never try to do it ever again. They still try to and just fail and try again. That's the proper way.
That is everything that we have for the episode. Thank you so much for listening, and hopefully you will catch the next episode. This is All Things Go.